Hi guys, it's the Island Girl and I'm back with another reaction video for you today. And today I'm reacting to England's even North versus South divide. We're going to get right into this one. I'm getting this one Jimmy the Giant. The link will be in the description below. Please go over and show him some love. Tell him your Island Girl sent you, alright? Alright, let's get into this video. I don't know what this is all about. This was a suggestion. So we're going to get right into it. So come on in, wrap back with a smile on the face and enjoy. To all my regular schmegulas day one to the pie to the poos. Come on in, wrap back, put a smile on the face and enjoy. Here we go right now.
Northerners with their shorts in the winter, community spirit. And then Southerners with their Waitrose and lack of eye contact.
A Northerner has been accused of terrorising London by walking around saying hello.
England has long been split in two. However, behind all the jokes and the stereotypes lies a story of betrayal and exploitation.
You've got the interest of the working miners to consider, 78,000 of them.
Two different Britons and two different ideas of how this country should be run. And a brutal division that has spanned the course of history. Today, we will explore England's North and South divide.
Basically, when it starts getting really that's when you're in the north.
Being a northerner, we're northerners, and I don't care what the southerners think of us.
I don't know, every time you meet a northerner, they have a thing against us. I don't know what it is.
Let's spin the wheel. First subject is the North-South divide.
All right, so a question that plagues every Brit is, where does the North, where is it begin? And it's kind of a hard question because as much as we might ask for one, they haven't built a wall.
I believe we should build a wall and make it official. I do.
There's no loading screens. There's no official signposts, even though our motorway signs point that it's somewhere in that direction. And so, yeah, it really kind of depends who you ask. If you ask a Londoner, they might say,
north of Watford and you're in cannibal country.
And if you don't know, Watford's here. So that's their imagination of where the North is. If you want your boy's opinion, and I'm based here, I consider myself a Southerner, obviously, listen to me. And to me, the North is kind of like where your accent changes. If you start saying Bath, you're a Northerner. So to me, I would probably consider it somewhere around Peterborough or like Leicester or something like that. However, if you were to ask someone from Scotland...
Where does the north of England start, in your opinion? Edinburgh.
But lucky for us, there is a smart boy by the name of Danny Dorling who did some serious academic tings. He plotted the North and South divide as here. So, I guess that's it. Case closed because Danny told us so. Thanks, Danny. Fucking nerd.
There are some foreigners that are coming over and taking our jobs, and not even working.
They take our jobs if they're not working.
Because they do it. They do it. Simple as that.
On a very surface level, the obvious difference between the North and the South of the country is accents. Northerners have like a ton of different accents. You got your Manchester accent, Liverpudlian accent, Yorkshire accent, Geordie accent.
Proper naughty boys.
All with their own little intricacies and differences. In the South, it's much more simple. We have two accents, rich and poor. If we're just going to paint general...
Man, when you come on to accent, you guys cover that. You have different accent from every little nook and cranny. I don't get it. Why the divide though? In my eyes, you're all just one. Don't get me wrong. I don't mean one in a bad way, but I'm like, okay, let me not get myself in trouble here. Let me listen.
General strokes, it tends to come down to how we pronounce certain vowels. So words like bath, path, laugh, half. Northerners will say it like bath, path, half, and laugh. Silly Northerners. But accents aside, what about behavior? Northerners generally are seen as friendly. They're a bit tougher, they're a bit more hardy. And we also kind of see them as like less educated. I didn't say it. It wasn't me. But this is interesting, right? Because like Northerners chat to each other, chat to strangers much more than Southerners do. And that's why if you're like a super duper deluxe mega multinational corporation and you want to like seem as though you're a family run business, typically in their adverts they will use Northern accents because we perceive like the Yorkshire accent as just more trustworthy.
Last stop on round would be old Ma Peggoty's place. 'Twas like taking bread to the top of the world.
But when they do the technical smart stuff at the end of the advert, they'll use a Southerner, obviously. Yes, Peter, we'll take it from here. Thank you.
Well, this still has many times more wheat germ than ordinary bread.
So yeah, Southerners are generally seen as like more educated, ruder, more arrogant, softer, like weaker, stubborn, stuck up. I mean, like, come on, Northerners at least...
What a comparison between the two. No, what a Because you're telling me Northerners are more friendlier and they're considered less educated. And the Southerners are the richer side and the snobs. That I didn't say, he said it. What a divide. Huh.
They have all the friendly, nice, happy-go-lucky stuff. For us, it's just bad things.
Up their own asses, aren't they, a little bit?
Pretty mean Londoners.
Not got a full grasp on reality, do they?
Posh twats. Posh. Don't matter where they're from, they always sound a little bit posh. I'm just like, oh.
But, you know, at least we're richer, so I can cry in my Ferrari. Or more likely, an overpriced Waitrose meal deal.
Who's from London gives a cheer? Quite a few. That was probably the longest conversation you've ever had with a stranger, I imagine.
Well, look, now we've done the stereotypes. That's kind of the cute, fun, friendly side of this story done. If a Northerner and a Southerner were having a beer together in a pub, this is what they would talk about for the first one, maybe 2 beers. What's that, mate? No, it's pronounced half, not half. Cob. It's a bread roll, mate. Football references. But you see, it'd be around about pint number 3 or 4, where things would start to get interesting and the conversation would take a turn.
Okay.
Without London, the GDP per capita of the UK would be less than the state of Mississippi, the poorest of the United States.
Put simply, the south of England is richer than the north. However, has this always been the case? Has the south always been richer than the north? No. You see, the way it worked historically is that before the Industrial Revolution, we had the Agricultural Revolution. And in this time, both the north and the south were toiling the land, growing carrots and potatoes and raising animals. And in general, in this period of time, the south was like more forgiving when it came to farming. The land is flatter, the weather is marginally more reliable. And so in this time, many of the aristocrats who owned all the land, a lot of them would have these really large estates in the south of England. And whilst, of course, there were giant estates also up north, if you kind of look at these sort of maps of castles and manor houses, etc., you can really see like the concentration of all these buildings are closer in the south and a bit more spread out in the north. And so, yeah, historically, the south was a bit wealthier and it would have the big wealthy cities like London, Oxford, Cambridge. And with its location being closer to Europe, it meant that we could trade across the seas. And so the south tended to have easier access to more like luxury goods. But then one day the boys would log on, load up the server, and there was a major update. The Industrial Revolution. In unison, the boys grabbed their diamond enchanted pickaxes and headed for the mines in search of one material, coal. The Industrial Revolution completely flipped the tables. Now the north was wealthy and it's to do with coal. If we look at these maps, you can see how much coal is up north versus the south. This was all tied together with like the invention of the steam-powered engine, the steamboat, the steam train, all of which required coal to operate. It had this ripple effect where they became like the hub for shipbuilding and like heavy engineering. The north had fucking risen, and now the south were the brokies. Bazza, what are you holding? What the fuck is that? Don't be a dick, mate. You know what it is. It's a carrot. What's that, Bazza? I can't hear you over all this fucking coal. However, this success wouldn't last forever.
Okay, let's see if I get this. So at first, the South was striving and going because they have easier trade. Their land was easier to farm. As in for the North, it was a more struggle for them with farming and trading. And then also more castles were on the South. So, and then the North less because it was more spread out based on terrain. That's what I heard so far. And then all of a sudden, things switch where the coal, where it comes to gold, was more on the north side, and then the south side plummet because they don't have the gold. So, yes, continue. What happened next? Okay.
Yes. Il porte.
So at some point, the North falls off, right? And a lot of people kind of debate when this happened. A lot of people say that during the interwar period, so between like the 20s and the 30s, the Bogdanov brothers came in and absolutely fudded the North's economic boom.
Dump it.
However, according to this paper called The Political Economy of Britain's North-South Divide, it claims it was even earlier. It was 1914, where the idea of the prosperous North had already come to an end. Also, this paper is more specific. It splits the North into 2 different categories. So it groups together the manufacturing heartland, which is the West Midlands, North West, and Yorkshire Humberside regions. And then it groups together the industrial periphery. This includes Wales and Scotland, as well as the northern region. And if you look at some of these graphs, it actually shows that the industrial periphery was already on a gradual decline long before. But you see, whilst all this turmoil was happening, quietly sat back, waiting for its opportunity, was the South.
The first problem we got to get rid of is that slut upstairs.
The South was different, right? Yeah, we had very high unemployment, and we didn't have coal, and yeah, we were generally poorer, but we did have London. And that means that we had them rich boys, you know, them prancy bros with their, just, I don't know what they do, to be honest. And so, like, think about it. Whilst the Northerners were down in the mines, filling their inventory full of coal, working themselves to death, creating these massive ships, by the early 1900s, the South was getting into all these sexy new industries. I'm talking light engineering, you know, electricals, consumables. As well, London had become our capital for commerce and finance. It had become literally an international trading hub. Big corporate headquarters, research and development centers, they were in the South. You see, the North had completely tied itself to coal and heavy engineering. It had gone all in. Whole towns were literally built around mining. The South's economy was much more modern and much more diverse. And so, while the Northerners were toiling in the mines, the South were taking those spoils and building their rocket ship to the moon.
Liftoff. We have a liftoff.
This is interesting. I am not gonna lie, to see the difference between the two sides. So you're telling me eventually the South came back with diversity, as in trading, and then London became the hub of everything. So different ideas started to pop up in the South, and then that is what propels them to the top again, while the North continue when it comes down to coal, and they build their whole infrastructure around that. And, you know, wow, this is just, yeah, mind-blowing.
The source of life has suddenly dropped away from the whole community. The folk linger on unemployment allowances, but the place is dying.
So look at this graph, right? If you see this graph and you see this massive fuck-off spike, that means bad. During the interwar period, unemployment, it went insane. Poverty is absolutely rotted, and the vibes were very unchill.
Can I tell you something?
Yeah, bro, yeah.
The vibe's off, man.
And the people of Britain in this time were speed-running political extremism. The commies and the fascists were out in full force, and it was pretty touch and go for a minute. And like, a lot of this anger and animosity was to do with the unemployment, which was directly tied to Britain's decline in industrial output. This map here is really interesting because it shows how industrial technologies spread across the continent. So our nation got very rich first, and all of our wages went up. However, when wages go up, that means people have more money, and that means the cost of living goes up. And so that means the lives of the working class, the labor force, they need more money, they need higher wages to sustain their life. And like, yeah, the workers were loving it. This is great. You know, more money. It means we can eat sugar. Oh, try this, Billy. It tastes like dreams. However, there is a problem. You see, as these less developed nations had finally got their tech tree to the Industrial Revolution, they now had all the technology that we had, but their wages were much lower than ours. So cheap that it would be much cheaper for us to fucking send a pigeon to tell them to put their coal in a boat, huck that boat all the way to Britain, than for us to use our own coal and pay the wages they need in order to mine it. And so basically, the North got fudded.
What? Are you serious? You're telling me because of their low cost, you left the North and get it from coal from somewhere else? Okay, now. Okay.
Ibort. Dump it.
Shocker.
The third is this. We have to buy abroad in order to live and prosper. We can only buy abroad if we sell abroad. Let's pull together for prosperity.
After the war, Clement Attlee and the Labour government come in and just save Britain from fascism, basically. And how they do so is by moving us away from this extreme free market capitalism, a system that will always look for the cheapest supply and pay the lowest wage to make the most profit. It's just the name of the game. And so after the war, our whole country moved into what was more like a social democratic system, where the government's job was to ensure that all people were employed and paid a living wage. And so they would do this by nationalising industries such as mining and manufacturing. And to prop this up, they would impose things like tariffs and subsidies. These were protectionist policies to make sure that foreign imported goods didn't outcompete our own goods. And so these policies, whilst they were not economically efficient, they would stave off unemployment, poverty, and also reduce inequality. And the hope was that the people of Britain wouldn't elect a Hitler or a Britler, if that's better for you. And these policies, these were radical policies, and they worked. The UK economy boomed. Britain as a whole gets massive investment and inequality shrinks. And yeah, maybe the South was doing a little bit better than the North, was getting a bit more investment. But the thing is, everyone was winning in general, and we were kind of chill with it. And then some absolute fuck shit happens.
Well, I can't see any future, really, not for the children. There's just no future in it for any of us.
There are nearly 2 million houses officially unfit for human habitation. Nearly a quarter of our homes are without either an inside lavatory, fixed bath, or hot water.
Mate, the 70s was an absolute mess. This is where it really took a turn, right? It went from, it's Bath, you stupid northerner. No, now it was, you people literally destroyed this country, you have ruined us, and we hate you now. Now, this is where we have to remember, right, that the North and the South, their economies were based on two very different things. These northern industries started to be considered what is known as lame duck industries. It's the duck that, has a good heart, he cracks some funny jokes from behind, but the problem is his wing's a bit gammy, and he's kind of slowing down the whole pack. And we can handle that when the going's good and we're growing, but what if everything all went wrong at the exact same time?
In the last 2 years, Britain has suffered one of the highest inflation rates in Europe.
And so the miners' strike continues. And while it continues, coal supplies begin to decline.
Traffic in the cities was down by about 10%, and those looking for petrol were reminded that there was no point in queuing.
With little immediate prospect of industrial growth, those without work now account for 6% of the total labour force. All were aware that Britain was in its worst economic crisis for more than 40 years.
We shall have a harder Christmas than we have known since the war.
The leadership of the NUM has said uneconomic pits must stay open. That is absurd.
And so throughout the 70s, really, the North goes to war politically with the South. The trade unions are fighting the government for better pay for the miners. And the government doesn't have the money and or the want to pay them more. But the miners are there and, they still need to eat food.
Holding the country to ransom. They're not. They just want a fair day's wage for a fair day's work.
Now, look, you can obviously tell I'm probably more sympathetic to the North, but the North, they weren't angels. In response to the Southerners and all the stereotypes they gave of Northerners, they would say we're all selfish, stuck up, arrogant, and that we care for nothing other than ourselves, which, it's true, but, you can't say that.
You shut your mouth when you're talking to me.
However, you have to remember the South really hold the power in this country. The South always gets the most investment. Westminster is located in London. And all the newspapers that were fueling this sort of war, for a long time, most of them were literally located on one street called Fleet Street. And over time, this growing rift between the middle classes of the South and the working classes of the North become increasingly hostile toward each other.
Have you noticeably cut down the standard of living that you have?
Yes, definitely.
Have you had to actually cut back on anything?
Well, no, I haven't. Prices have increased, and they've increased by 20%. Easy.
How much does it worry you?
Well, it doesn't really worry me, that much.
As a sort of perception was increasingly pushed that the miners were being selfish and asking for too much. But this was further fuel. This was further divisive rhetoric that was splitting the country down this sort of north-south divide, leading to Thatcher shutting the mines.
We want a very prosperous coal industry, but you can't do it by failing to invest in the new and by clinging to the old.
Oh, snap. So, based on this explanation, you're saying that the North, in a sense, they're saying, look here, we just need our basic wage. We just want to work and get paid. That's pretty much it to survive. The South is saying, well, that's not the case. You're just being cruel and selfish and it's all about you. But there's majority of the investments and everything that came into the South because that's the hub of everything. The divide it's a divide and conquer when you look at it, guys. I'm like, you should be coming together, pulling together, and then Thatcher came in and shutting it down. That didn't help one bit. Let's hear what happened.
People's got no jobs, they're starving, children starving. It used to be a thriving community and she just totally killed it all.
Overnight, this just gutted the North. This was their communities, their history, their entire economy and soul was built around being these mining communities. And this attitude, like the cruelty of this decision, irreversibly changed British cultural values. Previously, we saw ourselves as one nation, working together, looking out for our weakest and banding together to make our country better for everyone here. But now we were divided. And you can see it in like the voting patterns of the North and the South. The North typically were more working class and they voted for Labour, and many of them were members of trade unions. These groups pushed for more workers' rights and believed in more government ownership and more social democratic policies. However, the South mainly voted Conservative, who were more into privatisation and reducing government spending and investment, sort of, unless you're a very rich business and then have all the money you want. And so, the North had slowly become seen as a burden to the country. The North, who had once literally powered the British Industrial Revolution. And Thatcher sort of blamed these unemployed people as being like leeches of the government.
What sort of society do you think we'd have if you said, it's the state's job to find a job, it's the state's job to house me, it's the state's job to look after my family?
She flipped everything we believe in. Her rhetoric around like the nanny state would lead to a massive skepticism of government investment and spending. But it was kind of specifically cruel because it really demonized individuals. And so all of this created some monumental problems for the North of England.
Jeez. Wow, when she was saying that, I'm like, yeah, have you no heart for this, for the North? Because like he said, they were the heart and soul of what caused the boom with the mining. And then all of a sudden, it's like they're the drag. They're the one that is pulling down the country. Woo, this is some heavy stuff. I don't get it though. Aren't you supposed to pull together, like he said, pull together, we're one. Let's figure this out together. And it always happened that way. There's always a divide. There's always a rift within a country. I don't get it. Why can't people just come together and help each other? But no, a fingers has to be pointed somewhere, so they divide. Woo!
You start to take through what they call spending in the public sector. First, government has no money. We only take in money from ordinary men and women. So if we take in more to spend it, it means that they don't have it to spend. So the amount of demand is the same in the economy.
So after the 80s, Britain deindustrialized. And so whilst the South was being pushed into the future, the North was being left behind. And it's complicated because Thatcher was probably right. We should deindustrialize. However, because her ideology was so fundamental, it was so radical. Instead of deindustrializing and then pumping investment to help bring the North up to speed, she had completely made the whole country against investment from the state. And so when the mines closed, entire communities, towns, cities went into massive decline. We can see here how employment declines in manufacturing and services in the North, but we see a stark rise in service employment in the South. And we can see general trends that the employment rises in the South and generally drops in the North. And you got to think what effect this does have to the North, like the ripple effects, right? So say you're a Northerner and you were quite affluent and you were quite educated, and all of a sudden the North has just died. Many of those people are going to look at the South and see how prosperous it is and move there.
I mean, the only reason people lived in these villages was because there was a mine there. And when they did take the mine away, we were left with a state of anomie where there was no point to be there.
The report paints a picture of lives marred by family fragility, stagnant wages, poor housing, chronic ill health and crime. The most disadvantaged in Britain are no better off than they were 15 years ago at the time of the financial crash. There is no sign that help is on the way.
And mate, from here, it literally just gets worse and worse. You can look at economic output, productivity growth, real wages, and also housing prices, transport connectivity, R&D spending, investment. Bruv, it ain't looking good. Poverty rates are 5 percentage points higher in the North than the rest of England. Job growth since 2004 has been less than 1% in the North. Compare that to 12% in London, the South East, and the South West. There was a report in 2016 that said that that 310,000 graduates from up north had moved down south. And when they survey young people these days, they say that nearly half, 44% of 16 to 21-year-olds in the north expect to move from their area for better job opportunities. And basically, only 15% of those who plan to move have any plans of staying anywhere up north. So most are going to go south. They have generally worse health, and it's believed that 30% of the north and south's productivity gap is actually due to lower health in the north. They've done the maths right, and they've worked out that if we just improve the north's health, it would literally add 13.2 billion to the UK GDP. And on top of all that, right, if it ain't bad enough, they die younger than southerners. They have a lower life expectancy. Northern kids are also more likely to be in lower income families and having to claim free school meals versus the south. And there's a lot of evidence to say that this poverty, like this deprivation, results in kids coming out of school with lower grades. Children in London and the southeast are 57% more likely to go to university than in the north. So this is going to affect their futures, their job prospects. Your future is just better off if you live in London.
The UK is unusual in that while other developed countries saw regional inequality stay stable in the last 40 years, it's actually increased since the 1970s in the UK.
So with all of this in mind, you have to remember, these are the consequences of decisions made by politicians. So it would be really handy if we had something to compare against, like a state that was split into two, one poorer than the other.
Germany, 4 years after the end of the Second World War, balanced between devastation and new beginnings, and of course facing some dramatic changes.
East Germany was in the Soviet Union up until the 90s. It literally had a wall. You couldn't come in and out. They were in desperate poverty. But then...
I'm Peter Jennings in New York just a short while ago. Astonishing news from East Germany, where the East German authorities have said, in essence, that the Berlin Wall doesn't mean anything anymore. It is perhaps the most important announcement made in Central Europe since the end of World War II, certainly since the wall went up.
Since the 90s, if you compare the difference, the inequality between West and East Germany, the West and East were able to get much closer and reduce that inequality. And they did this through major investments. And these investments were achieved with no cost to the economic performance of Germany as a whole. And boys, I can't stress this enough. This is a failed Soviet state in the 90s. Compare that to what was once the prosperous north of Britain. And apparently, according to this research, half of the UK's population live in regions whose prosperity is no better than former East Germany. We have literally got worse whilst they improved. And the paper also tells us that in the UK, our Friedman-type shareholder capitalism has largely only benefited London in a way that's largely been at the expense of other regions, while at the same time, nationally, gaining no long-term productivity advantage over any of the similarly developed countries around. To me, it's like a really good example of showing how this Thatcher ideology doesn't work. You need to invest into things to maximize what you get out of it.
Yep.
It's not been trickle down of growth, it's been the opposite.
He is right, because think about it. If they had just invested in the north and you understand and cause employment to rise and help with the different infrastructure, then it wouldn't be as bad, because when you look at the comparison to Germany and what happened, they invested, they had the wall, then they take it down and say, listen, we can't have this going. If we help them, then everything would be on the rise. And I was surprised that it wasn't even thought of, because remember, if they had that industrial boom, and if they and when things went left or when it went down, before they shut everything down, if they had stuff to say, you know what, let's bring them along with the South. Let's do some investment and bring them along with the South. There wouldn't be as much poverty. All these kids wouldn't be there from the north, moving to the south in order to get better employment, a better way of life. All the things that they are deprived of in the north wouldn't be the same. And when he even said that, look, the comparison, the life expectancy is longer in the south than in the north. Kids are more, what's the word? Let me put it in my term. Kids are more educated that are in the north than in this. Kids are more educated in the south than in the north. The kids in the north are more likely to have free lunch because of the they can't afford to live a certain way than how the south is living. And I'm like, come on, if you're one nation, why wouldn't you pull together to ensure the north is getting some form of assistance to at least bring them up to par to similar to what the south is going through? Man.
So with all that being said, right, what are we doing to try and fix the North? Everyone knows we need to do something, and every so often, every few years, we get a new scheme. Yeah, no, don't worry about it. We got you, don't worry. We're going to fix you up nice and proper.
Can we fix it? No, we can't.
Winston Churchill, in 1912, said that if we wanted to preserve the UK, we needed to split it into 4 different regions, sort of implying that it would give the North its own governing body. Jump forward to 2014. George Osborne walks out in Manchester and announces the Northern Powerhouse. You know, they had all these big ideas. They were going to pump a load of money, do loads of stuff, bring all the money, do investment, woo! And like, some of it happened. Sort of. But the key things like the National Powerhouse Rail, that has been promised forever because all these major northern cities have terrible connections between them and is costing us money. We could be making more money if we fixed it, but that never got built.
Well, this is what I'm saying. So it's just a buzzword. It is all mouth. They've been saying the same thing. I mean, I'm 58 now. They've been saying the same guff since I was 18
Jessica?
and first got politically aware.
So time goes past after this big promise and the North get pissed off. A good chunk of them voted Brexit, and it seems to be mainly as like a fuck you to Westminster. They thought it was like a we got ya. Turns out the North is most likely to be most negatively affected by Brexit, but at least they got them, right? After a while, the government then reskinned the idea of Northern Powerhouse and called it levelling up. Now the government had realised like it's not so much a North and South divide as much as it is the whole country is fucked, and now we need to invest loads of money to try and fix it. But with all these big claims, obviously COVID happened, and then you had Rishi Sunak saying that
I am ending this long-running saga. I am cancelling the rest of the HS2 project.
But obviously not the southern leg. We'll be keeping that. This was like the high-speed rail that would have probably been quite beneficial to the North. But again, it just, for some reason, it didn't happen.
The facts have changed. And the right thing to do when the facts change is to have the courage to change direction.
Look, man, I could just keep going. It really doesn't stop. But we've focused all of our energy on the profitable sides of Britain and just left everywhere else, particularly the North, just go into decline. And that can only really work for so long until the strain that puts on the richer parts of the country starts adding up and those costs go up and up. All the while, we just become less and less productive as a nation. And it just seems obvious to me. Like, if you want to keep a fire burning, you need to put some logs in there from time to time.
We've had decades of lack of investment, and then Britain has always been guilty of short-termism. So it's always been like spiffs, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So rather than planning ahead, we've always been, how can we make money quick?
If you enjoyed that video, be sure to leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and join our Discord where we chat about all these topics and many more.
Ooh, that video right there was an eye-opener. I gotta be honest with you, because I didn't even realize that was the case there. I had no clue. But a lot of times when you stop to think about it, guys, when you think about politicians, they always say anything and everything to get there where they need to go, and when they get there, they do not follow through. Now, one of the things that I look at, I'm like, okay, he said it. In order to keep the fire burning, you got to at least do what? Put a little what? Are you okay? Okay. In order to keep the fire burning, you got to do what? You have to keep what? Putting a little wood in the fire. You got to keep that fire burning. Put a little investment into the North and to get things rolling, to get it eventually, because you're bleeding one side, literally. You're pushing one side, and eventually you're going to bleed it dry because, okay, one side, the South, is the up and up, the rich, the everything. And then you're leaving the North. Eventually, the whole thing combined is going to deteriorate over time, because guess what? The pressures of the North are what the North needs in order to facilitate that you're going to bleed out the South. It's as simple as that. And it's sad that that's how it is. And I know it's not the UK alone. It's not England alone. There's so many other countries that are going through this. And I'm like, can you guys not stop to think and find solutions instead of just turning a blind eye to one area and uplifting the other area? It don't make any sense to me. I'm like, okay, oh, that's a lot to take in, like I said. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section. It's my first time looking at something like this. Like I said, the link is in the description below. Please go over and show Jimmy the Giant some love. Hit the thumbs up on this one. Let me know what you'd like me to check out next in the comment section. Your girl got you. It's your island girl and I'm running out of here. Be good, be kind, be safe, love each other. It's always a divide and conquer somewhere, everywhere, guys. I don't understand why we can't all pull together and see everybody prosper or want to see everybody prosper. It's just the world that we live in. Love you guys, and I'll definitely see you guys in another video. Bye.